I'll just put the date on. 11th of April 1997. Interview with Billy Bell. Interviewer Jeanette Hilton. Cameraman Dave Brown. Living History, North East. We're ready, Billy.
Right.
Okay.
The street we're living in now is called Grey Road. But originally, at one side of the street was called Robinson Street and the other side was called Hurton Street. Grey Road was altered, it was made into Grey Road about 30 years ago. Now, in Robinson Street, there was a chapel called Hurton Street Chapel. And the funny thing about it, it was called Hurton Street Chapel, but Hurton Street was on the other side of the road, so somebody got mixed up with that. I was born in 1918 in 36 Robinson Street. I went to Valley Road Schools as a boy in the infant class, the juniors and the big boys class. And I left school in 1932. I started to serve my time at the North East Marine, served my time, and then I went to sea for about a year before the war. And then when the war broke out, I came home from sea, and the ship I was on, unfortunately, was sunk by all hands the week after I left it, so I was lucky. I started work at the North Eastern during the war and worked in the shipyards and in the engine works. I went to the coal board in 1952 and worked for the coal board till 1982. And I was a union secretary for many, many years. But my real life began when I retired, when I took my redundancy when I was 62. Because I'd been involved in history of Sunderland, especially the East End and Hendon. I remember the old chapel down at Hurton Street Chapel. There was a big schoolroom there. It was like a boarding school. Now, that's where they used to hold the election campaign meetings in them days when the general election was on. There was all, and also it was a soup kitchen. During the depressing years, we used to get, I never got them, but a lot of the lads and girls at Valley Road School used to get a card and used to go along to Hurton Street Methodist Chapel rooms and they used to get soup. Also, we used to get tickets issued by the police authorities for boots and shoes and clothing. We used to go down High Street where the old assembly room, where the old, it used to be the old town hall originally. It's still standing today. It's been renovated and brought back to what it used to be 100 years ago, I think, repaired. But we used to go there for the shoes and boots. The girls used to go one day and we used to go another day as the boys. Also, when we were on short time as apprentices at the North Eastern, we used to go to the Dole School at the East End. Now, the Dole School was behind Prospect Law. We used to go on a morning and then there was other boys went on afternoon. If you didn't go to the Dole School, you didn't get your 3 shillings dole money. That was stopped. Because your father used to get 3 shillings dole money for you. But if you didn't attend the Dole School, you got your dole stopped. There was always great rivalry between the East End people and Hendon. It wasn't a violent rivalry, don't misunderstand me. It wasn't fisticuffs. But there was always a great rivalry between Hendon people and the East End. Now, the East End had the town moor. And the town moor was well used. It used to be the fairground. There used to be all kinds of shows on there, as photographs will tell you and show you. Now, with the Hendon people, we had a place called Hendon Burn. It is down at the bottom of the street now where we live now, side the public house, down at the bottom there. But Hendon Burn was a wonderful place. We used to hold our fairgrounds there. Now, when the war broke out, it was taken over and there was area shelters dug for the public. Because what you have to remember, Hendon and the East End suffered quite a lot in the areas on Sunderland in the Second World War. The street we lived in, Robinson Street, what's now Grey Road, there was 10 bombs dropped on that street and they never exploded for some reason. And we were out of our house in about 2 months while the bomb disposal squad was digging the bombs out of the houses and out of the road. St Ignatius Church was badly damaged. A Heinkel bomber was shot down in September 1940. It crashed in Tatum Street, crashed on the shops in Suffolk Street rather, and part of it fell on the church and the church was badly damaged, and the lady was killed in the house. The man lost his leg, and the daughter, who's still alive today, lost both hands, and she was adopted by a boat called the Belfast, a cruiser, and that cruiser now is in the Thames. It survived the war and has been preserved. But now Hendon, Valley Road School, the school I went to, it was badly bombed and destroyed in the Second World War when Corporation was bombed and a lot of people killed. Hendon suffered quite bad, so did the East End. But the great things, what you remember, you don't remember. You think about them things, but the great things you remember is the pleasure you got living in Hendon and the East End. Things was bad, the depression was on, as I say. Men were out of work and things was very, very bad. But in them days, there was a great thing about the neighbours. Everybody helped each other. You could go out and leave your door open. You could go out and leave your back doors open. If anybody was bad, all the people used to go and help out. If anybody died, there was a bereavement, the people all used to get together and help the family. There was a great lightness and love amongst the people, and they were very humorous, the people. We had quite a few public houses in Hendon. We had the Bush, what's still standing. We had the Hendon Gardens, that's still there. We had all the pubs in Fowler Terrace, and we had the pubs on Nobles Bank Road, the fish shops. We had the old market at the East End. Now, the old market was a very famous place because everybody used to go there on a Saturday. And you could go there, and it used to open at 9 o'clock in the morning and close at 11 o'clock at night. And everybody in the East End in Hendon used to go to the old market. We used to go to the old Villiers Cinema in Villiers Street. It's pulled down now. When you came out at 8 o'clock, we always went there to get the meat and the vegetables for the Sunday dinner. It was a very, very famous place. We had the Hendon Docks, the South Docks, what we call the South Docks. Now, a lot of the men in Hendon worked in the docks. Some of them worked as trimmers and tamers on the coal stays. Some of them worked in the prop yards, unloading the prop boats. And then there was quite a lot of people who worked in Bartram Shipyard and the North East Marine and Greenwells, very famous engineering places on the River Wear. It was a time of great work. But in the Depression years, all them places was closed down apart from the North Eastern, and we used to be on short time. We used to work 1 week and then be off 6 weeks. But going back to our early days in Valley Road School, they were wonderful days. We've got photographs of us taken in the school in the 1927s. We had wonderful teachers, and the girls' school was on one side and the boys' school was on the other. Now we had another part of the school. There was a woodworking section. Now the boys from Hendon Board School used to come to Valley Road School for tuition and instruction on wood, and you could gamble. When at playtime, there was always a fight in the yard between the Hendon boys and the Valley Road School boys. We had St Barnabas Church. That was at the top of the bank where the Burnham Cottage, side of the Burnham Cottage. We had St Paul's Church along Tatum Street, down where the medical centre. Now, St Paul's Church was the rectory church of Hendon. It was the first church built in Hendon in 1854. Then we had St Ignatius Church, that's at the bottom of where Ward Street used to be, and it's still standing today. I go there as a member, and I think it was built in 1889. But then we had the Methodist Chapel, we had Mainspring Terrace Methodist Chapel and Hurton Street Chapel. Then we had the Bethesda along Tatum Street. But and then we had Backhouse Park. Now Backhouse Park was given to the town authorities in the 1920s. And it was a very wonderful place, Backhouse Park, because we used to go there. We had Hendon Beach and Grangestown Beach to go on to. We never went to Rockland and Seaburn. All the people of Hendon all went, and the East End all went to Hendon or Grangestown Beach. When you go along there today and you see the promenade, we had no promenade, we just had a rough road. But it was better then. There was a lot of nice sand and cliffs and everything. Now there's a promenade there, and there's a seawall and everything. But And when we were boys, we used to play all kinds of games. Follow the cross, Mounty Kitty. We used to have hoops where you had a wire there and you used to bowl the hoops round and have races in them. But as far as we're concerned, the history of Hendon, it was a wonderful place. Wonderful people lived in it, and we had quite a few doctors. We had a doctor where I'm living now. We had a doctor on the other side of the road. They called him Macpherson, and he was our doctor. Now every time he came out, your mother used to have an agreement. She paid twopence a week or threepence a week, and that doctor would come out. Now if he came out twice in 1 week, you exceeded your twopence or threepence. So you had to pay an extra 3p. And 3p in them days was a lot of money. But they were wonderful doctors, and they used to go about in horse and carriages in them days. And then when they got a bit more on and more modern, they got the first motor cars or the motor cars. We had, and originally, where I'm living now, and I'm looking out of my window, in 1872 we had the horse trams coming down that street. They used to come up Burden Road, down what we used to be called, down Grey Road, what's called Grey Road, turn at the bottom side, Herrington Street, Chapel, go along Tatum Street and back up the town. That was the horse trams. Now, in the 1920s, they dug all this road up, and we were boys, and the corporation dug all the road up and put new cobblestone. And when they dug the road up, they found the old horse tram lines. And they covered them in. So in 100 years' time, if they dig this road up again, they'll find the old tram lines of the horse trams. Because the horse trams started in 1872, I think, and finished in 1900 when the electric trams took over. And that was stopped. But there's quite a lot of history about Hendon.
You mentioned earlier the old market in the East End, which was a big centre of attraction. I wonder if you can describe your first experiences of that and give us a flavour of what you would find in the old market.
Well, it was an experience to go in the old market when you were boys, because you went with your parents. You know, we didn't go on our own, because even in them days we used to go in. And as I say, you went in and everything there was available to buy. There was toy shops and everything. But the atmosphere in the old market was wonderful. Now at the end of the old market, at the other end in High Street, East, there was a chapel. And on a Saturday night, the Salvation Army and the chapel people used to hold a sing-song of the old hymns, the Sankey hymns, the old chorus hymns, and on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock till 9. And everybody in the old market, all the people were about, they all used to congregate and all used to sing and join in the singing. It was a wonderful atmosphere, the old market. It was. We had a new market in the town called Jackie White's Market, but that opened in the 1930s. But the old market was opened in about 1880. Now, when it finished as a market, it was taken over by Stales, the engineering people, during the war. And there was a factory in there and people were making different things for the war of it. But then I think eventually after the war it closed down. It was near side when St. Old's Catholic Church was, side Holy Trinity Church. That's where the old market was. But it was a very unique place, and it was a place where people concentrated. Everybody knew, well, not everybody knew everybody, like, because it was Sundays, but you all knew where to meet and where to meet the people. And I have a list in the house somewhere. There was 190 public houses from High Street West down to the old market, down to the East End. There was and in Hendon and in the East End there was over nearly 190 public houses. But when we talk of public house, we're not talking about what we're saying now, all this modern public. There were little corner shop pubs, maybe it were 2 rooms and things like that. Because a lot of the men used to like to go and drink and everything. And what we have to remember Grangestown. Now, for all Grangestown was never considered a Hendon or the East End. It was always prominent in our life because Grangestown was only 5 minutes, 10 minutes walk from us. And a lot of the people at Grangestown that lived there when they built the council houses came from the Hendon area. So it's always been a well-populated area and a well-known people in Hendon. If you go, when we used to go up Willett Road, all the shop, everybody knew each other. Your mother used to go to the butcher's on a Saturday and get a £0.50 packet of meat, what they called a parcel for £0.50. And in them days, a £0.50 was a lot of money. But that used to be used for your Sunday's dinner and maybe it's for the Monday. But people of Hendon, people of East End, they were the salt of the earth. No doubt about it.
You mentioned the Dole School, Billy.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly would you do at a Dole School?
Well, what we used to do, because we were apprentice fitters. When we used to go there, they had teachers. You used to go on lathes and go on the benches and used to file and make things out of metal. Now, the boys that had no trade, they got trained in different things to help them in their life. But we were apprentices, and we were, when the depression was over or the depression was lifting, what we used to do, we used to work 1 week at the North Eastern and have 5 weeks in the Dole School. And then when the depression finished, naturally we all went back to work and this finished our time. But as I say, there was a lot of, the Dole School was well known. It was at the back of Prospect Road. It was round about where old Moorgate Street used to be. Now all that's been pulled down. But the East End in Hendon was they all talk about the Bishop Weymouth area. Now that part is one of the oldest parts of Sunderland, where the Empire is. That's where Bishop Weymouth village was. But Hendon started to get built in the 1800s in the East End. But the East End was there before Hendon. Because if you go down to where Wylam's Wharf is, where the new hotel is, it's only last year they found all the old cellars and the old rooms where the basements used to be of the 4-storied houses down where the Wylam Wharf is. So, no, the history is a wonderful place of Hendon in the East End.
What was it like on the fish quay in the early days when you were a boy and a young man growing up?
Right, remember there was 2 fish quays. People forget that. There was a fish quay in the dock at Hendon. We have photographs of that. But there was also a fish quay on the river where the fish quay is now. Now, everybody, especially at Easter time, because as everybody knows, Good Friday was always the day that was kept up. And you never had meat on the Good Friday. You always got fish on a Friday because it was that the ritual of the church. And everybody used to go down. Now, when the fishermen used to come in from up the river, they used to do exactly what the same today. They used to take the fish out of the boats with the boxes, and you used to gut the fish, put them on the tables, and you could buy the fish as what you do now, fresh. Not like the fish shops, what you say now with the fresh fish that's been in freezers. You could buy, and it still goes on today. You can go down the fish quay and buy the fish fresh as anything. But the other fish quay was down at the Hendon Docks. It closed in the 1930s, or the 19th. Well, it closed when the war broke out. But the fish quay was a very famous place, very busy place.
And how were your recollections of how people would travel up and down High Street? Because it's quite a steep bank from, the West End to the East End, or the East to the West.
There used to be the tram. We had no buses in them days, in the 1920s. It was all tram cars, double-decker tram. Now, they used to go down High Street Bank, right down to where the Pottery Buildings were. The Pottery Buildings is gone now. They were destroyed during the war. And then they used to go along where the corporation has the building there for the dock area, for the dock people. They would used to go along there and up Prospect Road, past the Boys Orphan Asylum, and up Lawrence and back to the town. That was the tram cars. Now in the 1930s we got single-decker buses, and they used to do that. But a lot of the people you see, they didn't walk very far, because if you lived at East End you could get everything within a 5 minutes walk. Unless you wanted to go up the town for a walk, then you walk up. Nobody got the tram or the bus. Not the young people, the old people maybe did. And the people, now the boys in the Boys Orphan Asylum, a lot of them, they served the time at the North Eastern with us. The North Eastern used to take so many boys out of the Boys Orphan Asylum and give them apprenticeship. Because remember, the Boys Orphan Asylum was there available for boys who lost their parents or lost the father at sea in them days, adulted later on. but it was originally just for orphans. Now that's it's still standing today. I think it's been renovated. I think they're doing it up, and it's a wonderful old building, the Boys Orphan Asylum, and it used to stand beside Holy Trinity Church. I think it's still there today, the Boys Orphan Asylum. And the thing I remember about the Boys Orphan Asylum when I was a boy, we have a photograph with them on. It had 2 brass cannons at the door on a stone pedestal. Now, the last time I was down there at a meeting, them 2 stone pedestals were still standing. Whether they're there now, I don't know. But the Boys Orphan Asylum was a very wonderful place. And then, when it closed, it went up to Alexandra Road to a big house there, and then it's finished.
Mm-hmm. Between the East End and Hendon, Billy, which are the characters that stand out in your mind the most?
Well, there was a lot of wonderful characters. We had Jack Casey, now the boxer. Now he lived at the East End. Now he was a remarkable man, a wonderful man. He was a very famous boxer, Jack Casey. And we had there was quite a few characters in Hendon. As you get older, you can remember things, but sometimes you can't remember names. But Hendon in the East End had their own characters. We had the men. One of the characters was the man that used to go and light the gas lamps. Now, with them days, we had gas lights and they had a long stick. They used to put the stick up to the gas light. They used to pull the trigger down and it used to light. Now, the other one that was a very famous character was the knocker-up. And the knocker-up was a man that used to go around the houses with a long stick, and he knew where everybody lived because he had a list. Now, some of them were pitmen at Rye of Colliery. Some of them worked on the docks, the trimmers and that. Now, if they had to start work at 5 o'clock, he used to go around and he knew the houses because he had a list of where they lived, and he had a long stick with a ball on the end, like a muffled ball, and he used to knock on the window, and he was called the knocker-up.
I don't know if you know, how did he travel from the docks to Rye? How would he get from?
Well, the people that, there was people in our street worked at Rye of Colliery. They either walked or they could get the tram car at the top in Rye Road, and the tram car used to go to Grangestown, and then the rural district trams took over from Grangestown side into Church and went through Ripen, Silsworth, Hurton and up to Southend. He could get the tram card at the top here and go to Grangestown, and then, but mostly when they got to Grangestown, they used to walk along Rye Road, and then there used to be a cut side of railway line. It's pulled down now, and they used to go to Rye Colliery.
Mm. What about some of the activities on the East End? Can you remember the ferry?
Well, the ferry, there was the Walter Rain and the Vint. Now, there were 2 famous ferries. We have photographs of them. Now, the funny thing about the ferry was, you paid a halfpenny. Now, if you lived on the north side of the river, and you lived at Hedworth Williamson's houses, when you paid your rent, you got a bag of ferry tokens. Because that was his land there. That's where the ferry landed. And the funny thing about it is, a lot of the East End people, that's my age and think back, it was a miracle. When there was a football match at Roker Park on a Saturday, you couldn't see that ferry for people, men. They were even standing on top of the whalehouse. They were standing all over. It used to be packed. And you used to pay a halfpenny, as I say, and it was well used. But it was a very valuable asset, because the people that lived at the East End, if they wanted to go to Seaburn, the only way to go was either go by the ferry or go up High Street and get a tram car down to Roker and Seaburn. So the ferries was very wonderful. And as I say, there was one called the Vilt and one called the Sir Walter Rain, named after one of the famous men in Sunderland, the Walter Rain and the Vint family. But it was a well-used thing, the ferry. And as I say, the ferry closed after the Second World War. There was a lack of public support for it, because what you have to remember, a lot of people shifted out the East End. When they made the new estates at the Port Estate, a lot of the East End people were shifted out when they pulled all Burley Street down, before they built the Garths. All them streets that was pulled down, the people were shifted out to different parts of the town, and we lost a lot of the families of the East End. Some of them came back when they built Burley Garth and all them Garths down there, and some of the families are still living there today. But the East End has a remarkable history, and so's Hendon.
Do you think, just as a matter of interest, Billy, do you think there's a case for bringing the ferry back? For history's sake, maybe, to link the north and the south again?
Well, you say I don't get down that much, but I think a lot of the people know, you know, the buses is that easy to get now. You can go to the town, get the bus up High Street if you're not fit to walk up High Street or you want to ride, and you can get plenty of buses now to Seaburn and Roker. It might be a success if they brought the ferry back. You say they had that other ship that used to run up and down the river on Pleasure. It got sunk, I think. I forget what they called it, but I don't think the ferry would be a success now. Because
I'm getting tell off, Billy.
Oh, that's all right. I get told off every day.
I just want to ask you, maybe on a humorous note, maybe some of your humorous memories of maybe incidents in the family, or maybe. Well, I remember when you were describing the Dole School, you had a story about those boys that had no apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. How did they occupy those boys in the school?
Well, I'll tell you what they done. We were all right as apprentices, but the boys that had no trade, there was teachers there or instructors. Now, what they learned, what them boys learned was bricklaying, plumbing. For all they couldn't be apprentices, they could work alongside on the buildings and that, and they learned so much trade. But the unfortunate thing about it was like everything else. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, everybody got either called up for the armed forces or called up for the shipyards or the pits or called up for the merchant service like so. And a lot of them boys that had no trade, I mean, say the men at the North Eastern and in the docks and all, they were all protected by reserved occupations. But a lot of them boys that had no trades, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, there was a terrible war on, and they were called up for the army in the night. The conscription came in October 1939, after the war broke out. So a lot of them lads did end up in the army or the navy or the air force or the ERP or the fire services for the war effort. But if it hadn't been for the war, them lads would have been helped to work, helped to train to some kind of a trade. But there wouldn't be apprentices, not like what we were in the shipyards in the engine works. What
was that story you were saying about they were shoveling coal?
Aye. Now the Dole School, that was it. That's we were all right because we were on lathes and benches and filing job. But a lot of the lads that had no trade, on the morning there was a great big hole. It was like and what they were training them to do was like they were training them to be firemen on a ship. Ship's firemen. They used to haul the coal through that hole there in the wall. And then maybe 5 ton of coal used to shift. Then they used to leave that, and then when the afternoon classes came in, they used to haul the coal back the other side for them to start the next day. It was a training thing because even the ship's firemen, now they were a class of their own because they were trained to fire the boilers, how to work the boilers, how to put the coal in the fire, how to riddle the fire, how to clean the fire, take glasses out and put them up the ash pans, up the levers with a stink, up in the stoke hole. They were a class of their own, and they were very. Now Hendon in the East End provided a lot of ship's firemen to go to sea, because we had local ship engineers and local ship companies in Sunderland, and they used to employ Sunderland men, and nearly all of them came from the East End or Hendon, the firemen on the ships. And they went to sea, or they went as donkeymen. Now a donkey man was on a ship, was the donkey man who looked after the pumps and after the oil and everything in the engine room to help the engineers, like what we were. He was called a donkey man. Now, a lot of them lived down at the East End. Some of them ended up in Trafalgar the Trafalgar houses. Them's the old houses side the East End. They were built in 1870 or something, and they've all been renovated and they've all been made modern. But the original buildings are still there. Trafalgar House or Trafalgar Square, I think they call it. But a lot of say the bulk of the people in the East End in Hendon worked on the docks, or on the railways, or on the river. Austin Shipyard, Greenwells, the North Eastern, Bartrams, the Limited Yard. All them shipyards was there then, and you all worked adjacent to where you lived. We used to walk from Grey Road or Robinson Street down to the docks, and it used to take us about 10 minutes. Started at 7:30 till 5 o'clock, and you worked a half a day on a Saturday in them times, and then when after the war, when we got the shorter working week, the Saturday became a holiday. So if you worked on a Saturday, you got time and a half. If you worked on a Sunday, you got double time. But no, remarkable. Hendon in the East End, remarkable, and the people were the people on their own. We know all these other towns, Liverpool, they have their own people, but you cannot forget about the people of Hendon in the East End.
What about discipline in the area then? What about local policemen on the
Well,
streets?
in them days we used to have the police boxes. Now the police boxes used to be different parts of Hendon or the East End. Now, what a policeman used to do, he didn't go to Gill Bridge. When he come on duty, they used to be on 6 till 2, 2 till 10 and 10 till 6. And when he came on duty at 6 o'clock in the morning, he went to the police box. And then he went in the police box, and he filled the forms in, and then he phoned in to Gill Bridge, to the main police station, that he was reporting for duty. Now, his job was to patrol part of Hendon. He didn't go anywhere else in the town. Now, if we had any trouble, and there used to be bother on, sometimes, he used to be able to call on other policemen in the adjacent area of his beat, and they would come. Now, if there was a big problem, they used to bring the Black Maria down. Now, the Black Maria was a black van driven by the police, and it was called the Black Maria. Now, if there was a trouble on or a bit of a fight on after the pubs had closed on a Saturday night, the police used to come down, used to call them out. But the bobby itself, Hendon in the East End, they all had their own little boxes. And that was all over the town, the police box. Now, all that's gone now. We're more modern now. Got panda cars and everything. But the old time bobby, he knew everybody. He knew all the villains on his patch. Now, where we lived, Hurton Street and Robinson Street, there was Ward Street. Now, there was two families. I'm not going to name them because somebody might be alive to you. But there was two families named in Ward Street, and they were the biggest villains in Hendon. And everybody knew if somebody's house was broken into, even in them days, everybody knew we broke into it. And the bobby on the beat, now we had a man called Mr. Wales. His daughter goes to our church, Molly Wales. That was her father. Now, he was one of the Hendon bobbies. They knew exactly where to go and look for. But we did have problems. But the bobby was the bobbies were very. Now there was one time at the bottom of our street there was gallons, and they had a barra. And one day there was about 8 of us out the street. There was Leslie George, Bobby Elliott, Charlie Plunkett, Georgie Riddle. Some of them were killed in the war, unfortunately, poor lads. We used to ride up and down. Somebody used to get in the barra, the shops, and run up and down Grey Road or Robinson Street to take turns. And one day the bobby come round. He said, "You enjoying yourselves and your sons?" Sarky. And one of the lads said, "Oh, what's the matter with you? What do you enjoy?" "Oh," I said, "Sorry." He says, "You three get on that barra." He says, "You," to me, "you get in the shop." He says, 6 times up and down that street. And he said that. I said, "That's where he got his heart back." Now, I said, another thing the bobby had, the bobby used to wear gloves, or he used to carry gloves. And he says they had a button, but they never used the button on Nazi horse. But he says he could give you a wallop with a glove. He says, when he gave the wallop with a glove, you felt it. And he had a cape, not a raincoat or a jacket, he had a cape. And he sometimes used to give the butt with a cape. But we knew all the bobbies. And the fortunate thing about we knew when the bobbies were coming round, because all used to come round the jam time on different times of the day. We knew when they were coming, but there was always a little bit fun and carry on to play cackaroos or follow the flag and all that. But thinking back, we weren't villains. We were boys and girls enjoyed it, but we didn't get up to the terrible things that's done now by a minority of the young people. There's a minority of the young people upsetting everybody, robbing old people and violence and that. But as I say, you could walk the streets at night time at 11 o'clock and very, very rare you'd get assaulted or attacked. Very, very rare. What?
The Union Workhouse.
Well, we have the workhouse here. The workhouse was in the East End.
Can I put that back on? I'd just be interested in this.
No.
I'll just ask the question again, Billy. Can you remember the Union Workhouse?
Well, the only workhouse I remember is down at the East End. I have a photograph somewhere where the people stand outside the workhouse in the 1930s.
Is that down the East End?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I thought it was here.
What was the poverty like, during the 30s? And
Well, it was terrible because, as I say, what your father went on, he went on the Gap. He got the dole for a week and then he got the Gap for 6 weeks. He got no money and you had to go to the Guardians. Now, the Guardians was a set of people who used to provide, and used to go to the parish. Used to get maybe 2 shillings or 4 shillings or a bag of potatoes or a lump of meat. But the Guardians, in them days, things was very, very bad. Some people couldn't afford to buy coal. What they used to do, they used to go to Hendon Beach or Greenstown and sort the sea coal out. And they used to go to along the cliffs at Ripe with bikes, and they used to come back with the bikes with the bags of coal on. You used to see them coming back along Ripe Road, and they used to sell the coal for maybe 1 and 6 or 2 bob. But things was in the depression years, things was very bad. But as I say, everybody helped each other. Mm-hmm. These days, I think, we're a very selfish community now. It's either that or the people don't like to be bothered. Mm-hmm. But in Hendon, in the East End, there's still a good lot of people there, like the old days. But a lot of the modern, the may go on. It's all them things is gone now. But the depression years were very, very bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lovely. Well done.
Okay, Billy, if you can explain that.
The photograph that you're looking at now, ladies and gentlemen, the gentleman in the white jacket is a man called Tommy Fox. Now, he lived at the East End, and he was a ship's donkeyman, and he worked for the North East Marine. He used to work on the ships. When we used to go out on trials, Tommy Fox was always the man that was in charge of the stoke hall. Very famous family, and I do think the building in the background, I might be wrong, some of you people might put it like, I think it's part of the old workhouse down at the East End. But that's a collection of people, and that photograph is in the 1930s.
Smashing.
How long have you been together then, Billy?
How long have you been married?
53 years, isn't it?
Yeah, 53
years.
53 years.
Which church were you married in?
Thompson's Memorial.
Thompson's Memorial.
Weymouth, Weymouth.
Methodist Chapel.
Lovely.
Uh-huh.
Smashing.
Yeah. We have 2 sons.
Uh-huh.
We've lived in this house 1951.
46 years.
You don't belong here, do you?
She's a foreigner. She belongs to Barbary Coast area.
Netherland Road, Netherland Newcastle Road.
You originally belonged to
I've
Bramble.
been here 50 years.
You belong down Rogan Avenue,
Yes,
Barbary Coast.
Rock Avenue. Roker.
Barbary Coast.
Aye. More history there.
Yeah.
Aye. Would you go to Thompson Memorial?
I
Avenue,
did, yes.
The
I've been
Methodist.
brought up there.
Where did you do recording that?
Corton, what did you do? Corton.
I want
Well,
to.
you them days.
Seaburn, wasn't it? Seaburn.
You say
Seaburn.
we didn't drink, Sal didn't drink,
No.
Methodist. But we used to go to the pictures a lot, and then
Uh,
you
walks.
used to do a lot of walking, and
Yeah.
we had quite some of the lads that we worked with, Stan
Yes,
Brains and
good
I.D. Gowland, we all knocked about together,
Mhm.
you know.
Uh-huh.
So you entertained yourselves,
Yes, aye.
you know, them days.
No,
You want
sure,
entertainment.
walking, Pictures, wasn't it? Yes.
Oh, it is.
Was a did you say it was a rag?
The ragman,
Ragman.
what they call the ragman. This photograph, ladies and gentlemen, we do think it's either at the East End or Hendon. It's a soup kitchen. If you look closely, you can see the boys and girls with the cans in the hand, and they were waiting for the people distributing the soup. We think that man in this one here, we think he's a police superintendent. We think it's the police in the old days, in the 1920s, in the Depression years, when we had soup kitchens in Hendon and the East End for the benefit of, especially for the children. But that's a very old photograph in the 1920s.
Excellent.